Presidents Trump and Xi both slowly moving closer, it seems, to, well, certainly markets are betting on a rapprochement of sorts. Are they right to, when it comes to the trade relationship between these two countries, given the tensions that currently exist?
Well, look, Tom, I think that at this point, really what you're seeing is that these two leaders have, they seem pretty committed to actually making this kind of a meeting happen. I realize that tensions have ratcheted up quite a bit over the last week or so, but, you just heard from Donald Trump there. I think, the U.S. is still motivated to put a meeting on the calendar with Xi Jinping. That's certainly something that we've heard from the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, for the last couple of weeks now, something that they're really, really pushing toward. And I think that with these upcoming talks happening in Malaysia, where the U.S. and China are ultimately expected to hash out some deals, that does also seem to pave the way for a pretty smooth visit by the presidents to the region, and then ultimately with this meeting that's expected to be perhaps in South Korea at the end of the month. Whether they can actually sort out all of the issues between them, I think, is still open to interpretation here. One thing that we did hear from Scott Bessent just last week was that maybe there could be another pause on the table if they're able to reach some concessions. Again, I think that's still very much an open question, but it does seem at this point that, everything's a go for at least getting these two leaders together at the table.
Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, two of the most powerful men on Earth, may finally be heading toward a meeting that could decide the future of U.S.-China relations. But behind the smiles and photo ops, there's a much bigger game being played, one that could affect everything from electric cars to national defense. Let's break down what's really going on.
Jill, what is the expectation from you and the team in terms of what is most likely achievable in terms of agreements between the two sides? President Trump has been listing his own concerns. What for you and the team is in focus in terms of what they could actually bridge this divide with?
Well, look, Tom, I think, that Trump laid out pretty much the three biggest issues that are really facing these two countries right now. You've got, his concerns about fentanyl, which maybe that seems a little bit more achievable, given that China has already taken some steps to address, some of those with some drug curbs earlier this year. So that's one thing that Trump has listed. Another things is soybeans. China has halted purchases of U.S. soybeans recently as kind of a point of leverage. I think that's another, we'll see what actually happens there. But the big one that Trump said that he really wants to resolve here is this issue of rare earths. I think that this might be, the most difficult thing for these two sides to ultimately agree to. So China controls a massive supply of, the Earth's capacity of rare earths materials, something that's used in everything from electric vehicles to fighter jets. What really ratcheted up tensions recently was that we had China actually institute new export curbs on sort of shipments of rare earths. Now, I think, that's going to continue to be a major sticking point when it comes to these U.S.-China negotiations. Whether we can actually see some kind of a breakthrough there, I think that'll be a really, really big tell as to how much tensions are actually easing, because, that's something that the U.S. actually thought they had reached an agreement on earlier this year when these two sides held talks in Geneva. We really haven't seen a lot there. And I think if you're China, you're looking at this particular issue and you're saying that's really the biggest piece of leverage that they have in any kind of a trade negotiation. So that's the one I'm most looking out for, whether or not they can actually have a breakthrough. I think, again, that's much trickier, but that would be a very, very, very significant breakthrough if they're able to reach an agreement that both sides are satisfied on.
So here's what's happening. The U.S. and China appear to be moving closer to a face-to-face summit, possibly in South Korea. But the real tension isn't about soybeans or trade deficits. It's about rare earths, the materials that power fighter jets, smartphones, and electric vehicles. China currently controls the vast majority of global rare earth production. That gives them enormous leverage over America's tech and defense industries. And with new export curbs, Beijing just reminded Washington who really controls the supply chain. If Trump and Xi manage to strike a deal here, it could signal a short-term easing in tensions, maybe even a boost for markets betting on stability. But if talks collapse, expect a ripple effect across commodities, semiconductors, and every major U.S. index tied to manufacturing. This is TheCryptagon. Stay sharp, stay informed.